Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Spectrum Talk. I'm Ruby Jones, and I'm here today with Rico Nelson, CEO of the Colorado construction management company, Civil Technology. Thank you so much for taking the time to join me today, Rico.
Ruby, happy to be here.
Great. I'm happy to have you here. Now, Civil Technology has provided construction management for major projects around Denver, such as the Denver International Airport, the Stapleton Redevelopment Project, the Webb Municipal Office Building, the renovated Denver Art Museum, and Denver's 14th Street streetscape downtown. Oh, that's an impressive footprint in the Mile High City. I can't wait to hear what's coming next. But first, tell me a little bit about yourself, Rico. Are you from Colorado?
Yeah, I was born in Colorado Springs, and most of my family is here in the Denver area. I went to high school here, bounced back and forth between Colorado and Southern California as a kid. Played college basketball at UTEP in Texas, and then came back, and I've been in Denver ever since.
Nice. So, do you prefer Denver or Southern California? But you have to answer correctly.
Yeah, I definitely prefer Denver, right? I've been in
Yeah,
most of the major cities in the country, and Denver is a wonderful place to live.
it is. I love it too. Now, your professional background includes finance and wealth management strategy. How did you end up getting involved in the world of engineering and construction?
Yeah, it's a great question. Coming into adulthood, I operate from a place of clear objectivity, and what I knew about myself is that if I was going to be an employee or an executive, I wanted to travel the path that offered me more autonomy over my career trajectory. So I chose the path of executive. And the thing about finance is when you get into the realm of finance in many um, segments of that industry, you have a real entrepreneurial education from day one. You have to learn how to manage your own calendar. You have to learn how to engage and interact with clientele. You have to learn how to um, win the discussion
Right.
because that's what moves the needle forward in your career. And so I chose finance because I had a bachelor's degree in marketing. I didn't really have the energy for school. I wanted to start my career education. And the thing about finance also is there are a lot of finance based certifications you have to receive, the Series 7, the Series 6, 64, 60, or sorry, 60, 63, 65, and 24. So those are all kind of
Wow.
education-based certifications that you receive as you elevate in the degree of executive responsibility you have in that field. And then there are also designations that you acquire, and you're doing it all as you are building and growing an organization. And so, um, in retrospect, I didn't fully understand the career path that would lead me to executive or lead me toward executive leadership outside of the willingness to get up every day and bet on my own capacity to go out there and make a dollar. So
Yeah.
that's how I ended up with the executive background that I have been able to acquire. A lot of it came out of finance. You know, in finance, you're evaluating cash flow statements, P&Ls, balance sheets. That's just the baseline for addressing financial viability for an individual or for an organization. And you learn to understand those instruments and how they operate. And then there are a bunch of subtle dynamics that factor into the way in which resources flow into and through a balance sheet. And so understanding all of those things is a great education to be able to step in and run any kind of business. But what specifically led me into engineering was during the pandemic. I had an ownership interest in a financial services firm. I was able to take a buyout and step into another executive role. And while I was in that role, the pandemic hit. And during the pandemic, like a lot of people, I was struggling to make peace with the existential dynamic that was unfolding that felt so confusing.
Right.
And you know, I was listening to the messaging we were receiving and watching what was happening in our social environment. And if you remember, our social environment was on fire, right? There were riots and there was racial upheaval and there was all of
Right.
this division. It feels like it's actually gotten worse since then, but
Yeah.
all of that was like right in front of us. And at the same time, there was natural disaster and there were environmental uh, deficiencies and issues, climate change, the depletion of natural resources. And then I started listening to the narrative that was coming from Washington, D.C.
Mm.
That was the year of an election. And during that election year, one of the big themes was infrastructure funding. And so I started to do some research and realized that our national and really our global infrastructure score was very, very low, and our local infrastructure score was very low. And huge amounts of investment was to be made in giving the world and our country an eco-friendly facelift. And that's kind of
Yeah.
the best way to describe it. And so, what I recognize is that our way of life, human civilization, and if you're a parent, I have 3 children, their future was really under threat. Our natural environment, our social environment, and our physical environment. And that was what prompted the conversation with Carl. He was battling a heart condition, and I knew that the company that he had started 35 years ago needed a figurehead that could take a renewed sense of purpose into the community and rebuild enthusiasm at the political level and at the social and business level for what civil technology could accomplish. And we could touch as an infrastructure firm the physical environment, but also the natural environment and the social environment. And that was
Right.
a lot more meaningful than the work that I was doing. It felt a lot more meaningful than the work that I was doing at the time. So I decided to make a transition.
Wow. Well, I mean, that's an excellent answer. That's not what I was expecting, but to hear that the COVID pandemic played such a huge role in you choosing to, change career paths. I think that's amazing. And the way you explain your background in finance and, everything that you were doing prior to what you're doing now, that really makes a lot of sense. Being able to, have oversight on all of those really um, important financial aspects of any kind of construction build. That's great. And I love how you really were motivated by that social landscape and the infrastructure changes that needed to occur in the country. So, wow, that's great. Congratulations to you.
Yeah, it's a work in progress, but
Okay.
it's a journey, right? Everything, every element of what I've experienced in business, um, any success that I've had in my career has really largely been about the journey. So the journey is the real success. It's not actually the end point. So I'm just in the midst of a journey, and thus far on the engineering front, it's been wonderful.
I love that. One of my favorite quotes is the journey is the destination. And I think more people need to be mindful of that, and live in that way because so many of us get stuck in these careers and we're like, this is not meaningful to me. It's not, really fulfilling. So I love that. Now, you mentioned your brother, Carl
Mhm.
Bourgeois, and he is somewhat of a local legend here in Denver, especially in the realm of real estate development. For those unfamiliar with his legacy, he played an integral role in preventing mass demolition within the historic Five Points district. He
Mhm.
restored a lot of the properties throughout the neighborhood as well as in Colorado Springs. And sadly, he did pass away in 2022. So, my condolences to your family, of course. But, Rico, did you have the opportunity to work closely with your brother in a professional role before he passed? And what did he teach you not only about the family business, but about life?
Oh gosh, a lot. If I freeze up, will you let me know? There's some things I can adjust over here to
Oh,
make
yeah.
my internet connection better. So please just let me know if I have an issue with the internet connection. But it's a big question. Carl, um, at his core was about family, and so he really invested in legacy and the legacy for his family. If you follow the roots of the family all the way back to Colorado Springs, what you'll find is that the Stroud, Bourgeois, and Nelson families all have this origination where they all came together there. And it's a long story, but there are a lot of articles written about the history of this family. Coming into the city of Denver, Carl took that same emphasis for legacy into his love and appreciation for the Five Points community and the Black business community in particular. You know, there was a time during the heyday of the jazz era, right in the mid 1900s, where
Mhm.
Black performers would have to cross the country from New York to LA, and they would perform at the Brown Palace, but they didn't have the freedom to actually stay there, and so they would come into the Five Points, stay at the Rossonian, perform at the Rossonian, and really bring this unique energy into the Five Points community. And a lot of people don't understand that that is the great history of that community. What he wanted to do was he wanted to revitalize the community, because when he was getting, you know, making his building his family in the Five Points, it was in the 70s, and that community of the Five Points was one of the most blighted communities in the nation. And so he wanted
Yeah,
to begin acquiring real estate and redevelop land and you know, bring some enthusiasm and some excitement back to the community. But at that time, it was very difficult for an African American to get lending, to get financing. You know, much less a commercial. And so he was um, advised by King Harris to consider construction management. And that's how civil technology got its founding. It was the byproduct of Carl's aspiration to redevelop the Five Points business community and revitalize the community. And that was what he wanted to do in Africa. It's what he set out to do in Colorado Springs. And everywhere he went, that was his main focus. So as
amazing.
I came into this discussion about civil technology, I wasn't as focused on the real estate development or community redevelopment. That wasn't my primary focus. My vision for what we needed to accomplish was much bigger. It was taking this enterprise that had its finger on the pulse of the infrastructure dynamics that were unfolding here in Colorado, and wanting to bring that to a much larger audience, national and then international, so that we could actually be involved in revitalizing many communities by virtue of delivering, you know, program management, project management, construction management, and other engineering and civil infrastructure services, you know, and take them as far as we could possibly take them. So my objective was to focus on core business. You know, when I talked to Carl about that, he would he would always talk about the fact that he himself, just like me, was not and is not an engineer. And he
Mm,
said you have to have great people around you. And
yeah,
so you know, his emphasis was to build a great team, and that's what I've been focused on doing since I got here. Being able to sell a vision and being able to visualize where the organization and its personnel has the capacity to go, critically important to interacting with community, government, and business leadership. Um, but beyond that, there is a technical emphasis and an understanding that you need to have as it relates to the X's and O's of engineering and infrastructure development, that engineers are most qualified, best qualified, and then project engineers, inspection personnel, and construction professionals are best qualified to address. So you've got to have wonderful, amazing technicians around you. And so that's been the approach. And that all came from my original conversations with Carl about the business.
that's wonderful. I love that. The contributions of your, forward thinking and his focus on legacy. That's great because I know that, naming some of the projects that civil technology has managed, yeah, it really is impressive. Those are massive projects that really contribute to really the landscape of Denver, and those monuments that everybody thinks of. Everybody knows the Denver International Airport, and the Stapleton redevelopment project is really amazing. The fact that so much land has been transferred into usable residential space. So that's really great. Now, you did mention community, and I know that you serve as president of the Colorado chapter of COMTO, which is an
Mhm.
organization that provides access to employment and contract opportunities for minorities within the transportation and other industries. So, what exactly does COMTO stand for? And what are some of the ways that the organization has positively impacted people here in Colorado?
So COMTO stands for the Conference of Minority Transportation Officials. It was an organization founded in 1974, as you said, to provide access to opportunity in the transportation and infrastructure space for minorities. So employment opportunities, but also contracting opportunities for entrepreneurs and businesses that are operating out of that space. And so, to your second question, in terms of how is COMTO, how has this organization impacted the community? So that we'd have to take it back to, and I'll speak to just the local community of Compton, Colorado. So it was founded 20 years ago, this year actually, by Johnny Thomas, who recently sold Triunity, but was president and CEO and founder of Triunity Engineering, as well as Phil Washington, who's the current chief executive officer for Denver International Airport. Um, at the time, Johnny was getting his engineering practice off the ground, and Phil was helping to lead efforts at RTD. And at the time, there was also a major railway program called Fast Tracks that was coming through RTD, and Phil and Johnny were able to leverage the enthusiasm around those projects toward helping to draw um, stakeholders from the political environment, from the prime consulting and construction environment, and from the minority business community to one place in order to facilitate better collaboration and create better inroads and communication with regard to how projects were going to unfold and be delivered to the city and to the state of Colorado. Well, coincidentally, Carl Bourgeois and Sheila King, who was Carl's right hand, and then became the eventual owner of Civil Technology. They provided the space, Kimball Hall, in the Five Points for Compto member meetings, and so the connection between Civil Technology and Compto in Colorado go all the way back to its founding and its founders. But as I step into this role, one of the most important things that I have set out to do is shift the paradigm that exists in the business community in very specific ways among all of its and all of our stakeholders. And we have three major stakeholders. There are other stakeholders, but there are three who kind of operate as kind of cornerstones to the organization. One, as I referenced before, is the small business community, and largely the small minority-owned business community, of which Civil Technology would be identified as a part of that group.
Mhm.
Another is the prime consulting and construction community, and then the third is the public sector leadership, that the agencies that focus on transportation work: Denver International Airport, the Colorado Department of Transportation, the Denver Office of Transportation Infrastructure, and all of the surrounding municipalities. So drawing these organizations together at this time in history is critically important,
Yeah.
and it's the reason I stepped forward to take this on. And I'll start by addressing the public sector. In the public sector leadership,
Mhm.
there are huge projects that have to move forward and have to um, basically get off the ground and completed to allow our community to be livable
Right.
and to address the growth in our population, to address changes in the way we're utilizing energy and our climate and our roadways, our bridges, and our facilities, all of them need to be addressed. And um, there are some needs that the public sector leadership has, and there are some dynamics that are unfolding affecting both the small and large business communities that require all of us to work together. One thing that I am asking of the public sector leaders is to be more fluid in their acceptance and willingness to engage employment and employees who are looking to come into this space. Whenever we have a project and we are aligned with a major agency, we have to bring candidates forward to deliver the work, but we also have to wait on the agency to approve those candidates. And sometimes that wait creates a delay that is problematic, not only for the delivery of the project and the work, but also for the integration of the new staff and the new employees. And in the
Mm.
meantime, tend to happen too slowly. And as things are moving too slowly, there's this brain drain. There's this huge population of individuals who are leaving the industry. So I'll give you an example. Right now, we're just talking about engineers. For every 4 engineers that retire or either age out or step out of the industry, they're only being replaced by one. And if you look at the entire infrastructure
Wow.
community from top to bottom, there's 17 million a few years ago, and every year about 1.4 million are leaving, and they are being replaced by only 3 to 400,000. So if
Wow.
you take those numbers forward, we have a institutional knowledge and awareness that is diminishing faster than it can be replaced.
Hmm.
And at the same time, we don't have the human capital necessary to deliver on the needs that we have as a society moving forward. And so that is a huge problem. And they have to the agency leadership has to understand this. This is one of the things that I'm asking of them to consider. In the prime consulting community, the large business consulting community, historically, they have aligned with small businesses as a means to an end. There are certifications that dictate on a public projects that minority participation or women-owned small business participation, occur at a certain percentage. And a lot of large companies look and they say, well, we've got to give 20% of this project to our DBE or MWBE partners. DBE stands for Disadvantaged Business Enterprise. Um, and in providing that level of work to the small business community, a lot of times it occurs as a checkbox, right? We need to do this. We wouldn't do it if we didn't have to, but because we have to, let's plug this, let's fill this position and then let's move forward. And what I'm asking them to do is be far more selective in the way they choose their small business partners. And that leads to the last group, right? Which is the group or not the last, but last in the order of the way that I'm describing them, the group that Compto exists to help support and serve. This is where the paradigm shift is most critical in terms of the transition that needs to happen. So right now there's a lot of political division, right? There's this thing that's referred to as DEI fatigue that we in the small business community have to make peace with and understand to a greater degree. And along with DEI fatigue and the loss of programs like affirmative action comes the scrutiny of small business programs like the Disadvantaged Business Enterprise Program, which
Right.
in and of itself is not something that the small business community should you see as a plateau, but rather simply a stepping stone. So it's supposed to create an opportunity for small businesses to be able to participate on contracts that they would not otherwise be able to work on if the contracts were just being bid by large companies who had the capacity to deliver and there was no program in place to facilitate small business cooperation and participation. But because these programs exist, they have to be utilized by the prime consulting community. So I stepped forward into an organization that has existed as one of these companies for the last 30 plus years. And I look and I immediately see all of the challenges that exist to continually and perpetually operating within this certification program as a small business leader. And the greatest of which is the fact that you are limited in the amount of revenue you can generate, in the
Mm,
amount of personal net worth you can hold as a majority owner, which I am now the majority owner of Civil Technology. So that's a problem. So that problem in and of itself tells me how far we can grow. We
right.
can't do more than $30 million in revenue, and a majority owner cannot have more than a $2 million liquid net worth. Now, those are rules that are only attributed to these minority and women owned small business certification
Wow.
programs. And the problem is, on a number of levels, you know, that type of limitation creates certain characteristics within the small business community that are challenging and problematic to the growth and the graduation potential of these organizations. And as a result, fewer than 10% of these organizations ever do graduate. And so, number one, what I will say is that happens because companies get into these programs and then get comfortable operating within them. That's one of the reasons. The
Mhm.
paradigm shift that I am trying um, to encourage is to start thinking beyond these programs,
Right.
right? Think about graduating and operating outside of these programs, doing more in revenue than these programs will allow you to do, having more in personal net worth than these programs will allow you to have, because that is going to unlock the potential for you to grow and become a national presence and an international presence. And there's far more work that needs to be done than there are companies or individuals that can deliver on the work. So there's a desperate need for the small business community to grow. Now, another issue is the net worth restriction. There, if you hear public leadership talk about small business, viability and closing the wealth gap and all of those things, generational wealth.
Mhm.
How can you possibly create generational wealth when you are restricted to a $2 million net worth? It's
Exactly.
impossible. Now I come from the finance world, so I can look and I can say, wait a minute, that is not that regulation right there is not conducive to creating generational wealth. So I
Mhm.
have a choice. I either hold myself to within the parameters of this program and limit the growth potential, and then by virtue of that limitation, impose all of these other limitations upon the organization that will create an atrophy. It's inevitable. We aren't
Right.
going to develop our technology and our personnel and our systems and our processes to the degree that we should, because we know that it's a certain size that we are never going to eclipse.
Right.
But the other issue is the net worth side of it, the wealth accumulation side of it, limits your ability to invest in other enterprises. It limits your ability to own real estate, to build capital, to do the things that every entrepreneur in this country really wants to accomplish. So that's when you come into the kind of the rub. Because on one hand, the programs are really good for the community, and I wouldn't want to get rid of the programs. But at the same time, the programs have created this thinking and this atrophy that isn't conducive to the type of growth and building and development that I think is essential and needed within our community. And so the only way to change that is to educate the
Mhm.
community and help to facilitate change, access to resources, and an understanding for why growth is so critically important. And that net worth limitation, the limited access to cash, greatly diminishes the one thing that entrepreneurs and business leaders need in order to grow, and that is access to capital. Because you're not going to get the resources from the lending institutions necessary to take you from 30 to $50 million when you are limited in the amount of cash that you can possess as an individual. So there are all kinds of issues, but those are the things that I'm working on, and that's the impact that we're trying to have in the small business community, in
Mhm.
the private consulting community, and in the public sector leadership.
Wow. Well, first of all, that's insane. That's pretty much the definition of economic inequity. Like you spelled it out perfectly. And so I have two questions actually based on all of that. The first is if you were to graduate from those programs, is there a sort of a cliff effect that you or other companies would experience where maybe funding that you've received becomes due immediately? Or, how would that impact your business if you were to graduate? and not utilize those programs? So I'll let you answer that one first, and I'll ask the other one.
Yeah. So at the very beginning, financial literacy is mission critical
Yeah.
because you don't have the ability to borrow your way toward graduation, right? Any capital, any commercial
Limitation.
capital that we receive is
Okay.
going to come by virtue of our credit rating and our cash position.
Okay.
So we're going to do our best to have a healthy cash position and have a strong credit rating. But the most important thing that we can do is deliver on the work that we win. We have to
Okay.
win the work, and then we have to grow, expand, grow our billable staff, expand the capacity that we have, and win more and more and more and more work, driving our revenue upward, right?
I see.
As we drive our revenue upward, one of two thresholds will be broken, either the individual net worth threshold or the total annual revenue threshold. Now, let's say that it's the total annual revenue threshold. If the
Hmm.
total annual revenue threshold is broken, it's going to have the same impact as the individual net worth threshold being broken, in that you're no longer going to be able to participate in those set aside programs that are conducive to delivering on public sector projects.
Right.
So, a couple things need to happen on the journey from being a DBE to graduating from the programs. And one of them is you have to learn how to prime work. You have to win work based upon your merit and your merit alone, not because you are a disadvantaged business enterprise, but because of the
Hmm.
quality of the engineering or the construction management or the program project management work that you actually deliver for the client and for the community. You should focus some of your energy on winning private sector projects, because in the private sector there is no minority certification program. And then you should also diversify into federal programs, as well as city and state-based programs and private sector programs. So that diversification means that all of your eggs aren't in one basket. So if
Right.
you're primary work and your work winning opportunities, either as a prime or as a sub, through numerous different entities, municipalities, major cities, airports, railway programs, and private sector, as well as potentially DoD or federal projects. That is going to allow you to know that you're not getting any of your business from any one area, and so that is a really critical state of mind that you have to operate in as a leader of these organizations, as you're building a vision and you're building your org chart and you're thinking about your capacity. A lot of companies that are started by engineers have a very specific focus, and the CEO of the company may be the lead engineer, and they expand organically, but they're really focused on a very specific subset of work. Well, if there are ever restrictions or problems or issues that arise in that environment, all of a sudden the organization may be scrambling to differentiate and
Right.
find elsewhere. So that's a problem. Not being an engineer serves as an advantage, because I don't have the mental. I don't have the mental framework that might lead me to only focus on one type of opportunity. I want to
Okay.
touch everything that we can possibly impact, and I want to do so in the most lucrative, viable way possible. But most importantly, is the delivery of value to the client, because that's what's going to allow us to win our next project.
I got it. Okay. So my next question then regarding all of that is whether Comto or civil technology or just you are really active in recruiting young people to participate in training programs and study programs, educational programs that would guide them to the jobs that you're saying are being lost as people kind of transition out of those roles.
Yeah, so Compto in particular has a scholarship program that we actually just relaunched a month ago, at an event that we had held to do specifically that. We were honoring the founders of the chapter and the historic leaders of the chapter, but we were also launching a scholarship program that is designed to draw students in high school into the transportation space.
Okay.
Um, And then in addition to that, civil technology is developing an internship program that will allow us to draw college students in to facilitate learning the work and getting on the job training while they're completing their. Um, we're starting with civil engineering students. And then we are aligned with organizations like Denver International Airport that has the Center for Diversity and Excellence in Aviation and other organizations that have great programs. Kiewit has one of the best internship programs that exists in the construction and engineering space. My son is actually in the Kiewit engineering internship program, and they are a strategic partner of ours in the work that we're doing. So there are a lot of things that we are doing to help facilitate that. Um, but as an industry, and this is from the public sector all the way to the small business leadership,
Mhm.
we have to do more to draw the younger generation into infrastructure,
Right.
um, because our futures are truly at stake, right? We don't have quality aviation, if we don't have quality roadways, if we don't have quality bridge work, um, we stand in harm's way.
Well, it sounds like it. And, it makes me think of a few years ago, or maybe even last year, there was a water crisis in Jackson, Mississippi, and they just did not have the resources to fix it. I think there was like one person who was still familiar with the original infrastructure for that water system, and that person retired. So they were
Yeah.
having to call him out of retirement to come help. And that just seems crazy. So it's good to know, about the scholarship program for the transportation sector, but also about your alignment with those different programs and those other internships to really generate young people's interest. I know engineering can be a broad topic when it comes to kids. They're like, yeah, I want to be an engineer, but they really need that direction to know this is the type of engineering you need to look at. This is the type of industry that needs you. So,
Yeah.
well, all of that is great, but Rico, what are your personal aspirations? What kind of things do you enjoy doing in your free time? And outside of work, do you aspire to, achieve any goals that are just all your own that you've always wanted to do?
Oh gosh, that's a good question.
You've done it all.
Well, no, 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 no. I'm a father, and
Uh-huh.
truth be told, um, I've been accused of being a little too serious, and I'm also a man of faith, and that is the thing that is most important to my soul, is that, and in that, I tend to always function with a deep sense of purpose. And I'll give you an example. One of the reasons that I stepped into this environment was, again, the existential evaluation that many of us were doing during the pandemic caused me to ask some really tough questions about the future. If we're if we're being honest, um, things are not as they have been in the past. We are more divided than ever. We can walk around as though we don't feel things changing and feel this headwind, this pressure moving against our way of living and our peace of mind. But the truth is it's there. Some people choose to ignore it. For about 25 years now, I have been looking into that pressure and trying to understand from a spiritual perspective exactly what was happening. And I take these steps forward in work with a desire to be a part of the solution, and at the very least have my finger on the pulse of the major changes that are moving our direction, so that if nothing else, I can help to insulate people that I love and care about from anything that this experience of living on this earth might throw at us. And so that's kind of a broad way of describing what I go to bed and I wake up with every day. And I've gotten to the point, I've been through a lot, and I've gotten to the point in my development as a man where I don't live in fear. Uh, to be able to face down the reality of the environment and the circumstances in which we are inhabiting and do it with a sense of peace and with love, it takes real effort today. I think it takes an effort in today's world to a greater degree than it has at any point in time in my life. And so I want to transfer that. Absolutely have to transfer that to my children, but to our employees, to the community. We want to achieve victory and see wonderful things happen. But as challenging times move our direction, we also want to do so locked in arm with those people that we love and care about. And sometimes when you find yourself terrified or afraid of something, it really helps to be able to lean into someone who's not afraid. And so the goal is to stand without fear and help others to do the same as we make our way forward and do so with love and peace. Um, Aside from that, those are the biggest and most important things that occupy my thoughts without going into detail or specifics.
Yeah.
I'm a former athlete, so physical fitness, feeling good is important. Um, the older I get, sleep becomes more important. I love a spa, so I really enjoy a steam room or a sauna and a massage, and sitting by the pool. You know,
Say that.
I mean, those are the things that I enjoy. I don't, I, golf is okay. I ski every once in a while, but you know, I like to sit and let my mind just rest a little bit.
Hmm. I love that. And I couldn't agree with you more about the spiritual perspective and everything that's been happening in the world today. And it's definitely comforting to know that someone with not only your experience, but your insight into so many different aspects of life and professional career, all of that, that you are thinking seriously about the future, not only for your children, but your actions and your impact in the industry will affect us all. So thank you so much for all of the work you do. And I think that's a good place to end. I don't want to take too much of your time today, but I've really enjoyed speaking with you, and I'm just glad that we had the chance to chat. So thank you again for joining me.
Absolutely, thank you. Hopefully, my connection wasn't too unstable. It freezes up from time to time, but I can turn some things off over here if it gets too bad.
No, you're totally fine. Um, Yeah, you're totally fine. And, for everyone listening and watching, to learn more about civil technology, make sure to read the September issue of Denver Urban Spectrum. You can also check out the company's website at civiltechnology.com and keep up with their latest news on LinkedIn. So thank you all for tuning in. Thank you once again, Rico, and we'll see you next time.
My absolute pleasure.